There's like a million ways to lose information you're trying to send across time. So, how do you make sure the message lives on and people remember? You make it hard to forget and hard to ignore, which is why redundancy is key. Redundancies, they're like backups for your backups. That way, if part of the information's lost, you don't lose it all. So like using multiple languages. Hopefully, one of those languages survives, and then the message can be decoded. And the way that you do this is you build redundancy into your information relay system. And you do it in a way so that those redundancies reinforce each other, which is precisely why the Time Bridge report says use the legend and ritual. Because the legend and ritual builds multiple redundancies into your information relay system, and it reinforces itself. So the way that I see it is using the legend and ritual trains the public to feel afraid of the site, so that fear is like a backup for the site's warning plans. And at the same time, fear sends the message implicitly, which is like sending the message in another language. Because fear is a language everyone understands. So theoretically, it's a language we could never lose. And even better, it's a language that doesn't even use words. You're not telling people to be afraid of the site. They just get it because they feel it. Plus, the legend and ritual backs itself up by making it hard to forget. Because every time that you retell the legend and repeat that ritual, it refreshes, this collective memory. So it works kind of like our holidays. By associating that information with an event that you celebrate every year, it's like setting a permanent reminder on your calendar, which means you refresh your memory on a regular basis. And it's pretty hard to forget things that you do repeatedly, isn't it? Especially if your entire culture gets into it, right? And it's like, okay, well, check. It's like, check. That's redundancy. So do you see? All these redundancies, they nestle inside each other. They're all interconnected, and each one reinforces the others. I keep doing this because I'm trying to say, they're connected. And what you're doing, you're making the information hard to forget by weaving it into the very fabric of your social system. And then that way, it just becomes, part of your way of life. That's important. And I'll tell you why. But before I do that, have you noticed I'm repeating legend and ritual a lot? Do you know why? Because by saying legend and ritual repetitiously, by repeating legend and ritual over and over and over, I'm not just telling you about redundancy. I'm showing you. Repetition is a redundancy that makes things sticky. But at the same time, repetition is tricky. You have to be careful because repetition gets boring. So eventually, it would be really easy to ignore me saying legend and ritual. But Not if you knew I was going to ask you. How many times do I say legend and ritual? See, it's really easy to ignore things when you don't understand the why behind them. So eventually, it would be really easy to ignore me saying legend and ritual. The same way that it would be really easy to stop repeating a legend and ritual if you didn't know why you were doing it. And so that's kind of what the atomic priesthood is there to do. The Time Bridge report says that to start this atomic priesthood, to secretly pass down this why behind the legend and ritual. The atomic priesthood is kind of like a secret redundancy that backs up the legend and ritual. And it doesn't say this in the report, but the way that I see it is the reason that they recommend using the legend and ritual is because the legend and ritual is such a powerful way of remembering that when the atomic priesthood eventually forgets why they're repeating this legend and ritual, it won't matter. It'll be so ingrained in the culture that the public will just keep the tradition alive. Hopefully, until someone rediscovers the secret and reminds everyone why you're doing this. Remember I said it's important to weave information into your way of life? This is why. This is why. Because it makes the information hard to ignore. And because it means that the legend and ritual lives on even if you don't know why you're doing it. Even after the atomic priesthood forgets that the false trail story may not be true, but there's truth in it. That belief that the site is dangerous or scary or off limits, that's what'll really protect the public from the site. And the site from the public. And that kind of powerful redundancy is exactly what you're going for when you're trying to send information across time.